I'm tired. Hello, everybody. It's my favorite neighborhood INFP. And before we get into, the whole thing of the start of the video, which will be reason number 3, we are going to be talking about 5 things you probably don't know about introverts, or why the things you knew about introverts is probably wrong. Now, some of you who have been studying the personality things, you're going to know quite a few of these things, and some of you may need to be reminded of some of these things, which is perfectly fine. Sometimes we need to go back to the basics. Regardless, here are 5 common to not so common things you probably either knew or didn't know about introverts, starting with number 1, getting out the easiest with the first 2. Number 1 is, of course, not all introverts are shy. Now, are there more introverts who are shy than extroverts? Yes, but that does not mean or equal that introversion itself equals shyness. Shyness is essentially a social anxiety type of thing, and oftentimes people will look at introverts and be like, oh, well, get over your shyness, or, go and do the thing, and all of that kind of stuff, thinking that being an introvert, you can suddenly somehow stop it and it goes away. Your introversion just goes away, because all an introvert is a person who is shy and socially anxious, and that's not a case. The actuality is that introverts deal with energy on different levels than other people. And what makes an introvert is how they process information. We'll get more of that later on down the road. And the energy levels they have. Also, we'll get down that in the road. But regardless, introverts aren't necessarily shy, although more can be than not, especially if they have been brought up in situations that may have caused it, whether it's been them being away from society for a long time, whether it's them not being able to socialize as much. There are a multitude of reasons, but most of it is a misconception that introverts are shy when they are not. Number 2, introverts are not antisocial. I see this a lot in all of the memes, across all of social media, across all of the content, seeming to somehow signify that every single introvert out there is antisocial. All the memes on introverts being antisocial, all of the books on introverts being antisocial. It's like introversion, much like shyness, has become synonymous with being antisocial. And once again, that isn't the case. There are many introverts who are extraordinarily social, and while yes, there are certain introverts who are antisocial, that doesn't mean that the entirety of the introverts are all automatically antisocial. A lot of that comes from the misconception when people have encountered an introvert down on perhaps, say, one of their low energy levels, or they have encountered an introvert who is genuinely antisocial, or they have encountered something that has given them, like, maybe the resting bee face, and that has told them, oh, that person must be antisocial because they're an introvert and they have that face. That's not how that works. It's just, while yes, most introverts, or you'll see it mostly in introverts, that a lot of them will be more antisocial than, say, extroverts, both sides of the story will have the people who are antisocial. They'll just show it in different ways. Which brings me to reason number 3, and goes back to the beginning of the video of me saying I'm tired, and that is energy levels. When it comes to introverts and extroverts, introverts have a lower energy threshold than extroverts do. As such, they need to recharge alone far more frequently than extroverts do. I will talk about extroverts also needing alone time to recharge be charged, but it's not as much as introverts, but that'll be on the extrovert video. With an introvert, a lot of their energy is spent usually socializing, and then over days when they've been like socializing with people, been around people, there's going to come a point where they're just mentally exhausted. They may not be physically exhausted, but they are most certainly mentally exhausted. They would just wish they could hibernate for like a week before they finally get that energy level back up and are able to go out into the world and socialize with, their friends, family, and whoever else that they socialize with. Their energy level is not as high as certain others. Like when I say certain others, I'm not even talking about extroverts here, I'm talking about introverts. Introverts themselves have a certain energy threshold within themselves due to how much tolerance of something that they have been able to build up. But regardless, depending on the energy levels or the tolerance to certain things that they've been able to build up, the social interactions, constantly doing something, stuff, chaos and all of that happening around them, that is essentially dependent on how much a introvert is going to be able to handle it versus an introvert who is not going to be able to handle it as well as an introvert who is. So say you're an introvert and you work in, say, tech support, or you work in customer support, or you work with a lot of people in, say, a nursing home or a daycare. You're going to have a bigger tolerance towards your energy levels than, say, an introvert who usually works on their own, who doesn't communicate with as many people. Those introverts are going to have a lower social energy threshold than the introverts who do consistently work around or are around more social encounters. Which brings me to number 4. There are essentially 4 types of introverts out there in at least the Myers-Briggs world, especially in the cognitive functions done by the guy who coined the phrase introvert and extrovert. The 4 types of introverts will also depend vastly how each one of those introverts communicates, goes through life, and just takes in information. And that is introverted feeling, introverted sensing, introverted thinking, and introverted intuition. Those are the 4 types of introversion, and in those you're going to have how people react very differently. Now, if you're new to MBTI, everybody has 2 introverted traits and 2 extroverted traits. I will do another video on this later about why I hate the term ambivert, to a more in-depth video. I may have done a video on that, but regardless, I'll do another video on ambiverts and the silliness of it all. But regardless, everybody has 2 introverted traits and 2 extroverted traits, which then go to show you how you are going to go about in society. It's going to show you what kind of introvert you are, what kind of social encounters you like, what kind of social encounters you're usually part of. So for example, an ISFJ may have a lot of friends or a lot of people that they talk to, or a big family, or taking care of kids, and are just generally probably one of, if not the most popular introverted type out there. They are the ones who a lot of people mistake for extroverts due to how, 1, many there are out there, and 2, just how much they do care about your social life and do go about the small talk that is often placed on extroverts and do all of the things that stereotypically are put on extroverts. So then people automatically assume that they are extroverts. This is an example of what I was talking about with the energy levels, and why I brought it up now after number 3. Then you have introverts like, say, the intuitive or introverted intuitives. The introverted intuitives are people who are kind of looking towards the future. They may not be as social unless the situation demands it of them. And it also depends on which one you're looking at. Are you looking at an INFJ or are you looking at an INTJ? And both of those can actually also be very social, but they can also be very reclusive. It all depends on what they're working on, what they're going towards, what they're focused on. And for them, it's like they're either very social and very network orientated, or then they're not very social and they're not very network orientated. Then you've got the stereotypical introverted thinkers, who a lot of people seem to think are what a lot of people base introverts off of, with their whole antisocial, shy, not going about and interacting with people and having a resting bee face and all that lovely jazz. That, I would say, probably comes from introverted thinking, because a lot of the stuff that they're doing is in their head or on their own. Depending on which one you are looking at, one will either be off doing things on their own and building stuff on their own, like Ron from Parks and Rec.
You will grow from boys into men, from men into gladiators, and from gladiators into Swansons. Behold, the Swanson Pyramid of Greatness.
Or then you have people like Abed from Community.
Ooh, tomorrow, they're showing all 4 Indiana Joneses at the Vista. I'm really looking forward to the first 3. I bought a whip.
These are probably those types would be the types that people automatically assume that's what an introvert is. But then, of course, it can also go to the introverted feeling side, which you can also get the idea that, oh, introverts are so artistic, and they're so imaginative, and they're so out there, and they're so amazing. And this comes often directed towards people like ISFPs and INFPs, where they are often very artistic, very book-orientated. A lot of the famous books we've had have been done by them, and a lot of the famous paintings we've had have been done by them. But once again, the stereotypes have also come in, and they've looked at it as a whole, not realizing that there are vastly different groups, stating that no, all introverts must be this one thing, and they all fit neatly into these 2 categories of you're either an extrovert or you're an introvert, not realizing that there are different kinds of introverts and there are different kinds of extroverts. Finally, number 5. There seems to be this case of either all introverts are put together and are organized and have their lives together and are a lot more calm and collected than extroverts, and they've got things neatly stacked and they know what they're doing, and they're more internal, so they think about everything that they're doing before they go and do it. So I would say number 5 is, we're not as put together as you think we are. We can be rather chaotic depending on where you look at it. Now, sometimes people will look at introverts and they'll go like, oh, well, they're just that type of artistic introverts. Of course, they're chaotic. But introverts in total are going to be more organized and put together. When in actuality, it's going to be more on the extroverts, who are typically more put together and organized than introverts in certain cases. And even then, it depends on what kind of extroverts and what kinds of introverts, because even that is split into categories, and how put together they are and how organized they are and how much they like order versus don't like order. And it all gets very muddled up. But I do see a lot of the times that people are looking at introverts being like, yeah, man, I wish I was an introvert. Meanwhile, an introvert may be going, yeah, you might want to second think that for a moment, because it's not as clear cut as people make it out to be, as they've kind of put introverts on this pedestal of, look at all the great amazing things that the introverts have done, and look at all the stuff that introverts are able to do, and look at how future orientated and everything that an introvert is, when really that is more based on certain types of introverts versus others, because other introverts are not put together at all, myself included. And I would even argue that everybody is not put together. There's just some people who are going to be more put together than other people. So if you think for a moment that introverts are more organized or more put together or more, I guess you could say, civilized, you might want to rethink that, because some introverts can be as chaotic as extroverts, and some extroverts can be as organized, if not more organized, as introverts. It all depends on the wide spectrum of introverts that there are out there. just like it depends on the wide spectrum of extroverts that are out there. But regardless, do not look at introverts as if we're some kind of paragon of intelligence and reality, when that is not always the case. And a lot of extroverts can be far more intelligent than introverts themselves. This isn't a mocking on introverts. Remember, I am an introvert myself. It's just a common misconception that introverts are more intelligent, more put together, more organized than extroverts, when really that is not always the case. With that being said, that has been today's video. We will then look at the extroverts when I get to that. But until then, I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.